Has the NBA All-Star Game died, and should it end? Once and for all, the truth is harsh but inevitable. The All-Star Game no longer excites. What was once one of the most anticipated events on the NBA calendar has turned into a dull game, lacking effort, competitiveness, and, worse yet, relevance. The league has tried to reinvent the format several times, but every year the situation only worsens. And now, the question no one wants to face. Is it worth continuing to insist on this? The central problem is clear. The players don't take the game seriously, and the fans can see it. The All-Star Game is no longer a real competition, but a casual exhibition, often bordering on ridiculous. There's no defense, no real effort, and the score hits absurd numbers with no one really caring. Who wants to watch a game where the players clearly don't care? If the NBA doesn't find a way to restore the essence of the competition, perhaps the best decision is simply to end the All-Star Game and turn the entire weekend into something completely different. The event used to be taken seriously. In the 80s and 90s, watching Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Shaquille O'Neal play in the All-Star Game meant witnessing the best basketball on the planet in a single night. The game had intensity, the players wanted to win, and the fans felt like they were seeing something special. But in recent years, the situation has deteriorated. Players care more about avoiding injuries than competing. The game has become a dunk and open shot festival with no tactical awareness or real effort. The captain-led teams and target score format were an attempt by the NBA to refresh the event. But in practice, it only exposed the problem further. If the players themselves don't take the game seriously, why should the fans care? And it's not just on the court that the event has lost its shine. The All-Star Weekend schedule seems increasingly disorganized and lacking identity. Recent changes, like having rookies play on Sunday and the Inside the NBA tribute in the middle of the game, signal that the league no longer knows what to do to revive the event. If the All-Star Game is neither competitive nor a true show, what does it still have to offer besides nostalgia? Was the tribute to Inside the NBA disrespectful to the players? Honoring Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson makes perfect sense. Inside the NBA is one of the greatest successes in basketball television history, and its influence on how fans consume the NBA is undeniable. But was the timing of this tribute appropriate? Interrupting a game for this raises an uncomfortable question. Is the All-Star Game still about basketball? If the game itself can be paused for a televised tribute, what message is the league sending to players and fans? Imagine this scene happening in a decisive playoff game. Impossible, right? So why is the All-Star Game, which should be a celebration of basketball, treated this way? This only reinforces a growing issue each year. The NBA is turning its most prestigious event into an entertainment show, putting basketball in the background. And if this continues, should players keep accepting the invitations to participate? The All-Star Weekend has always had an entertainment aspect. The problem is that, in recent years, the focus on spectacle has surpassed the focus on the game itself. In the past, even though it was a festive event, players took the All-Star Game seriously, and fans knew they would see high-level basketball. Now, what we see are players showing little commitment and a script that seems more planned for television than for the sport itself. The tribute to Inside the NBA is a perfect example of this. The tribute itself was deserved, but did it need to interrupt the game? And why didn't the NBA do this before, or after the game, or even at halftime? If the game is already criticized for lacking competitiveness, why make it even more irrelevant? This episode raises a bigger red flag. To what extent is the league willing to compromise the essence of the All-Star Game in the name of entertainment? If a game can be interrupted for a tribute today, what comes next? Live commercials? Interviews on the court while the game is happening? If the NBA continues down this path, soon the All-Star Game will just be a television show where basketball serves as a backdrop for what truly matters, generating clicks and views. Many players are already showing fatigue with the direction the event has taken. The level of effort on the court is at an all-time low, and the athletes themselves admit they don't take the game seriously. The question is, why do they feel it's no longer worth competing in an event that the NBA itself doesn't treat as a real basketball game? If the league insists on prioritizing tributes, entertainment, and television production, it's no surprise that players are losing interest, too. And if this trend continues, wouldn't it be only a matter of time before the biggest NBA stars simply reject the invitations? Players like LeBron James, Stephen Curry, and Kevin Durant have already shown in some editions that they don't care to actively participate. If one day Jayson Tatum, Giannis Antetokounmpo, or Nikola Jokic decide the event isn't worth the effort, the All-Star game risks losing all relevance. The NBA needs to decide, is the All-Star game a basketball event or a variety show? If Tatum continues treating the game as a secondary attraction, perhaps the players will start seeing it that way too, or worse, avoid it altogether. Were rising stars playing on Sundays a disrespect to true All-Stars? The NBA is always looking for ways to innovate the All-Star weekend, but was this latest change a strategic mistake? The decision to have rookies and young talents from the rising stars gameplay on Sunday, traditionally reserved for established All-Stars, raises an important debate. Does this truly help the league develop new stars, or does it simply devalue the prestige of being an actual All-Star? Jayson Tatum brought up this issue with good reason. Becoming an All-Star is a milestone in any player's career, a validation of years of hard work. When the league decides to place young prospects on the same stage, it risks diluting that recognition. After all, not just any player earns the honor of an All-Star game selection, or at least, that's how it should be. But this change could have even more problematic consequences. What if a rising stars player outperformed one of the All-Stars that night? Wouldn't that further weaken the meaning of the event? The All-Star status has always been something difficult to achieve. The event carries decades of history and has solidified itself as a mark of prestige in the NBA. For many players, their first All-Star selection represents the transition from a good athlete to a true star in the league. Placing rising stars on Sunday puts that tradition at risk. If rookies and developing players start sharing the same stage, the All-Star game begins to lose its exclusive identity. In the past, being selected meant you were among the best in the league. Now, it might just mean the NBA wants to promote you. The All-Star game needs to remain an event for the best players of the season, not a testing ground for the league's future. The NBA already has the Rising Stars Challenge for that. Mixing the two events only weakens both. Let's imagine a hypothetical but completely plausible scenario. A young talent like Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson steps onto the court Sunday night and delivers a spectacular performance, surpassing an established All-Star in points, assists, and overall impact. Wouldn't that be embarrassing for the event? Suddenly, a rookie could emerge as the main storyline of the night, while experienced players who fought for years to earn that spot end up in the background. Doesn't that create an absurd situation? How could the league justify a player who wasn't even officially selected as an All-Star outshining those who were? Moreover, what stops the NBA from expanding this idea in the future? If rookies can now play on Sunday, will we eventually see invites for any promising player? Wouldn't that completely strip the event of its essence? Of course, the league wants to promote its young talents, and it should. But is this the right way to do it? If the NBA wants more attention on the Rising Stars game, why not give more importance to the Friday event? They could revamp the format, create stronger rivalries, or even increase the prize money to motivate players to take the competition more seriously. The problem is that by trying to include rookies on Sunday, the league disrespects those who truly fought to get there. The All-Star game cannot become a mere marketing event for future stars. It must remain a celebration of the best players in the NBA at that moment. If the NBA wants the All-Star game to continue being a career-defining milestone, it must ensure that only the best are on that stage. Otherwise, the event risks becoming something ordinary, losing the weight and prestige it has held for decades. The NBA's tactical plan against Tatum is ridiculous. Year after year, NBA defenses attempt the same approach against Jayson Tatum, the double team, and year after year, Tatum simply dismantles this strategy. What should be a defensive tool to neutralize him ends up being an invitation for him to exploit space and punish any attempt at defensive overload. This raises an uncomfortable question. Do NBA coaches actually study and adapt? Or are they just following outdated patterns without questioning them? Is the league becoming predictable due to a lack of tactical innovation? The idea behind the double team is simple. Take the ball out of the hands of the opposing team's best player and force the offense to find other options. But in Tatum's case, this strategy consistently fails. And the explanation is obvious. He has evolved into an elite playmaker, capable of making quick decisions and finding open teammates before the defense can recover. When defenses double team Tatum, they not only fail to contain him, but also expose their own weaknesses. The Boston Celtics have a roster built precisely to punish this type of approach. With reliable shooters like Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and Drew Holiday on the perimeter, the ball inevitably ends up in the hands of someone who can convert efficiently. So, if the numbers show that doubling Tatum usually leads to high-quality shots for Boston, why do teams keep doing it? The answer might be uncomfortable for many NBA coaches. The league has a serious problem with a lack of tactical innovation. Many coaches simply follow the traditional playbook without questioning whether the strategy actually works against certain players. There is a tendency to apply standard defensive schemes without considering the nuances of the opponent. We see this repeatedly in Celtics games. When Tatum is on fire, instead of adjusting the defense in a smarter way, switching defenders, applying pressure on his dribble, or contesting his shots more aggressively, teams take the shortcut of the double team. And the result? Tatum reads the play, makes the right pass, and makes life easier for Boston's offense. If this approach fails every time, why don't teams try something new? Why not challenge Tatum to be a pressured scorer instead of allowing him to become a comfortable distributor? This resistance to adaptation reflects how stubbornly conventional the NBA can be. The numbers don't lie. Last season, whenever the Celtics faced double teams against Tatum, the team shot over 40% from three-point range in those situations. On top of that, Tatum recorded one of the best assist averages of his career, frequently setting up easy baskets for his teammates. The most absurd part is that teams have had plenty of opportunities to learn from this. In the 2023 playoffs, for example, the Philadelphia 76ers tried to double-team Tatum systematically in Game 7 of the series, and the result was a massacre. He dropped 51 points, completely dismantling their strategy. During the Celtics' 2024 championship run, we saw the same thing. Teams that insisted on this approach, like the Dallas Mavericks, paid the price. Tatum didn't need to force tough shots because he kept finding Brown, White, and Holiday in perfect positions to score. If these lessons are available to any coach with access to statistics and game film, why isn't the approach changing? This blind insistence on strategies that don't work raises a bigger concern. Is the NBA becoming predictable? If coaches can't even adjust their tactics against players like Tatum, what does that say about the evolution of the game? Today, much of the league's defensive approach is standardized and predictable. That could explain why some of the NBA's best offenses seem unstoppable, because defenses aren't evolving at the same pace. Basketball has always been a game of adjustments. The greatest coaches in history, Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich, Eric Spoelstra, understood that every opponent requires a different plan. But right now, what we're seeing in the NBA is a recycling of strategies and little boldness in testing new solutions. And in Tatum's case, this lack of creativity only works in his favor. If defenses continue doubling him the same way, he will keep punishing NBA teams just as he always has. Should Jayson Tatum already be considered the best player in the NBA? Year after year, the debate about the best player in the NBA revolves around the same names: Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, and, in some way, LeBron James, who, even at 40, still manages to be in the conversation. But why doesn't Jayson Tatum receive the same level of recognition? Are we overlooking one of the most complete players today simply because he doesn't fit the statistical superstar profile that dominates the league's narratives? The truth is, Tatum has everything you'd expect from a player in that tier. He is an NBA champion, the centerpiece of a team that remains at the top year after year, and perhaps most impressively, one of the few true two-way players at the NBA's elite level. While most stars are offensively dominant, but average on the defense, Tatum impacts the game on both ends, and that should carry more weight in the discussion. But why doesn't he get this recognition? Is there a bias against players who don't put up absurd numbers every night? Because let's be honest, what truly defines the best player in the NBA? Statistics? Championships? Collective impact? Narrative? In recent years, the NBA has become obsessed with advanced stats. Players like Luka Doncic and Jokic are revered for their surreal numbers in points, rebounds, and assists. And that's not unfair. They are both phenomenal players. But are we failing to appreciate those who, even without posting triple-doubles, every night impact the game just as much or even more efficiently? Tatum has never been the type of player who needs to monopolize possessions to be dominant. He fits within a structured system, doesn't force shots just to inflate his stats. And unlike many players who rely on a heliocentric offense to shine, he adapts to what his team needs. His efficiency, versatility, and ability to contribute to winning in different ways are underrated precisely because he's not the guy putting up 40 points and 15 assists every night. But should that really be the defining factor for greatness? If the best player in the NBA is the one who contributes the most to winning, then Jayson Tatum has a strong case. Under his leadership, the Celtics consistently finish among the league's top teams. He's not playing on a mediocre team, carrying a weak roster. He is the centerpiece of a team that is always in the championship hunt. And that matters. Being a great player isn't just about individual numbers. It's about the collective impact an athlete generates. There's a reason teams like the Denver Nuggets and Milwaukee Bucks are dominant with Jokic and Giannis, but struggle significantly when those players are out. The same applies to the Boston Celtics. Tatum is the piece that keeps everything together. Many argue that for Tatum to be considered the best player in the NBA, he needs another championship. Is that fair? To some extent, yes. After all, the biggest separator for legends like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Kobe Bryant has always been their ability to translate talent into championships. But if we strictly followed that logic, players like Giannis and Jokic shouldn't have been considered the best until they had multiple titles, right? So why is the standard different for Tatum? Narrative plays a massive role in these discussions. Jokic has the story of the European center who revolutionized the NBA. Giannis is the kid who grew up in poverty in Greece and became a physical monster. Luka is the Slovenian prodigy who looks like LeBron's successor. But what about Tatum? What's the story around him? Maybe that's the issue. Tatum doesn't have a major media-driven narrative behind his rise. He was always seen as an obvious talent since his Duke days, was drafted by one of the NBA's most storied franchises, and steadily evolved without dramatic twists. That may have led to his impact being overlooked over the years. But is it fair that a player needs a redemption arc or an underdog story to be recognized as the best? If we consider the balance between offensive and defensive impact, efficiency, consistency, and team success, Jayson Tatum already has a strong case for being the best player in the NBA. What's missing for him to receive that recognition? Maybe it's a second title. Maybe it's a statistical explosion that catches the attention of individual award voters. Or maybe, just maybe, the world just needs to start paying closer attention to what he's already doing. Hey, Celtics fanatics! What do you think of this news? Leave your opinion in the comments, as it's highly valued.